Welcome to Photoactive, a podcast about photography and technology. I'm Kirk McElhearn.
And I'm Jeff Carlson.
So it's that time of year again.
It's fall. Yay! Leaves are changing.
You know, that reminds me. I think in our last episode you were talking about the leaves changing, right? You get leaves changing. I'm looking outside here. They're all green. We don't have the kind of trees that change color.
Right.
They just kind of get to a darker green and fall off. Or I have like an 80-foot pine tree in my garden, and we don't get the change of color. So I miss that.
Yeah, and
that's why I like black and white photography so much.
There you go. Yeah. Well, and also it's ridiculous, and I apologize already because I don't know what it is. I go a little nutty this time of year, like just. As a photographer, fall just spins me, even though, and I say this, like I actually don't have any plans to go shooting any fall color yet. Like I'm sort of way behind on everything, it feels like. And it's just, picking up things here and there. But every once in a while, I'll take my kid to school and there'll be a tree that's like just starting to get orange. And my brain will scramble a little bit because it's so pretty. The problem is that I've fallen out of the habit of carrying a regular camera with me, at least for those sorts of errands.
A regular camera?
A regular
what do you mean
camera.
By that?
Well, I would have said, a camera where you put your finger on a shutter button on the top of the camera and press like that kind of camera.
Like a real camera.
Like a real camera. Except, guess what? Things are blurring even more because I have been taking pictures with my finger on the top edge of a camera lately. And I think we need to talk about this.
Yeah, it's the new pocket computer from Apple. It's the new glass and titanium slab that takes pictures, among other things. Interestingly, if anyone doesn't know, I write for the Intego Mac Security blog, and we cover a lot of things security, but also new Apple products. And I was writing a review of the iPhone 16 Pro, of which I purchased one. I think you got the same one, except you got the small and I got the big.
Yep.
And since the Apple Intelligence features that they've been touting all over the place, it's like the first thing you see on the Apple website. Since they aren't available in other countries without US English, you go on these other websites and here's the iPhone 16 Pro. New camera control button. That's it. Nothing else. There are no other new features in this phone. Obviously, I'm exaggerating a little tiny bit, but there's nothing that they're trying to sell other than that.
Well, and that's interesting because, like you said, everything here, all the commercials that I've seen, YouTube commercials and all of that are all Apple Intelligence, and this is what you can do, and isn't it great? And then the little asterisk in the small print that says features are not available yet. And it's bizarre that they are pushing that so hard.
It's frankly disingenuous of the company to do that. Speaking of disingenuous, I went back and looked at Tim Cook's line where he was saying that the iPhone 16 was built from the ground up for AI. This is the most bold-faced lie. I love you, Tim. I love Apple, but this is a lie. You took the iPhone 15 and you adapted it. You didn't build anything from the ground up.
Well, I think they can get away with it because basically they were like, it has the I think it has more neural cores and it has enough memory to be able to handle all of this. So they can kind of get away with this.
No, not built from the ground up, a tweak from last year's model because remember, last year's Pro models can run Apple Intelligence. The non-Pro models can't.
Right.
I want to come out and say right away that I am incredibly underwhelmed by this upgrade to Apple's Pocket Computer. If I didn't need to write about it for Apple Intelligence, if I didn't need an iPhone with Apple Intelligence to write about it, even though I have other Apple devices that do it, I would not have bought it. When I look at this iPhone sitting on my desk, other than the fact that the case is a different color, it looks exactly the same as my iPhone 14 Pro Max. We're going to talk about that there's a better ultra-wide camera. We're going to talk about the camera control button, with which I have shot about 300 photos of my feet, my knees, my desk, and the sidewalk since I got the device. I'm incredibly underwhelmed. So My suggestion to anyone listening is if you don't care about Apple Intelligence, don't buy this.
Now that is a bold statement.
Okay, let me modify that. If you've got, say, an iPhone 13 or older, right? Because it was in the iPhone 14 that they went up to the 48 megapixel main camera, then it would be a decent upgrade. But if you've got a 14 or a 15 and you don't care about Apple Intelligence, and well, if you've got a 15 Pro, you can run Apple Intelligence. I'm not the only one who's been saying this. I mean, I've been saying this for years, right? That their iterations are getting smaller and smaller. But I noticed several prominent reviewers talking about this in the same way, even saying that this is unfinished. This is the most unfinished iPhone ever. I think it was Nilay Patel on The Verge who said that. Mm-hmm. And it almost seems like they're messing with us. They're taunting us. They're saying, you got to have a new phone. And so here it is, and there's nothing to it. I'm exaggerating, saying nothing, but for the most part, there's not. On the other hand, there are some wonderful features in iOS 18, but you could get them with an older phone.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to turn that around a little bit, because this year feels like not so much that they're messing with us, but they are hamstrung by their yearly release cycle. And like this year feels more like, okay, we need to release a new iPhone every year because that's what we do. It's a huge. I mean, I don't think we can fully appreciate the scale at which this supports the company.
Tens of millions of units are sold every year. So
yeah, exactly. And like millions and millions and millions just flew over from the factories in China last week. I mean, just that scale boggles my mind. And so Apple needs to do a new phone. And I think the AI surge, I don't want to say revolution, but the fact that AI became such a big deal in the last year and a half, I think that caught them a bit by surprise.
It was like 2022 when ChatGPT was released, and that's what started all of this.
Yeah.
And at that point, Apple had already planned for their iPhone 15 and for their iPhone 16 because they're years ahead. So they had to they had to rejigger the iPhone 16 because the iPhone 15 couldn't handle the features that they wanted to add.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think they ever really expected that they would have to make the AI as a core marquee feature. And the market has basically, because everybody else is doing it, and because you have so many people who are like, oh, well, Google is all about the AI. Actually, Google is sort of too much about the AI. A lot of the stuff that Google has released this year that just feels so half-baked in terms of the AI is a little bit staggering. But okay, we'll put that aside for now because
But Apple has to play catch-up, and this is the problem. As you say, they're hamstrung by their annual release cycle. They can't afford to change it, even though they should probably go to a 2-year release cycle. It would make more sense. They can't afford to change it because they're locked into this because of the supply chain, because of the companies who build the things for them, because of the financial agreements for buying a phone, the way it works with carriers. We're stuck with this. Now, curiously, Google can release phones at a different rate, not always the same month every year, and other companies can do this as well. But take a company like Samsung that has 50 different phone models. They'll release their flagship phone at, let's say, the same time, but then they've got all sorts of others. I mean, Apple's success has boxed them into a corner with AI. What's most disappointing is that we're not going to see a lot of these features until they start talking about the next version of iOS. So we know that some of these things can be late. Currently, rumors suggest that the AI Siri will be February or March. We know that this could slip another month or two, and then we have WWDC. So we're already talking about iOS 19. Yeah. And that just feels it's going to be uncomfortable for Apple to justify this because let's take a trip down memory lane. Do you remember when Apple introduced the iPhone 12 and spent 30 minutes talking about 5G, everyone 5G?
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to download a film in seconds. Have you ever heard anyone say they've downloaded a film in seconds using millimeter wave 5G anyplace. Here, 5G is often slower than 4G, but they didn't have anything else to put in the phone, right?
Yeah.
It was their new thing, and they spent all that time. Now it's just like, well, they've all got 5G, so we don't talk about it. And I'm worried that this AI bubble, which it is, because I've been reading articles about all the companies investing in AI, and this is going to have a shakeout, and there's only a few that are going to survive. It just feels that Apple doesn't have the agility to develop phones that work with AI the way other companies do. That ChatGPT comes out with a new version every few months, and Apple is they're slow, they're plodding. Which Winnie the Pooh character is the one that's slow and deliberate? I don't remember.
Eeyore?
No, he's the one that's depressed.
Okay. Well, because he's depressed,
but
he's slow.
You get my point. There's this feeling of something that Apple's like a tanker ship that takes a long time to steer in a different direction.
Yeah. Well, and also, again, going back to scale, because as you mentioned, the iPhone 16 would have been in development years ago. And, to touch on some of the photographic stuff, which we will get to, we promise, you look at the camera control. That is a sophisticated bit of engineering and software. Like, that is not something they cooked up because they said, oh, we don't have anything new this year. So that is very impressive. What was my point? So my point there is in terms of scale, you're not just talking about having to sell a lot of things to fill the coffers of the company, beleaguered Apple, so that they can continue working for another year. You have to tool up. You have to have all of the manufacturing capability, and also you have to be able to do that at this massive scale. So the tanker ship is a good analogy because it's not like Apple can pivot very quickly. I think maybe they could, but it would be a huge shakeup throughout the entire chain of development, manufacturing, and all of that. Oh, to be someone who is in the meetings in Apple right now where they're looking at the iPhone 19 and how that has how what we're seeing now has shaken things up. And, they have to be forecasters. Maybe the AI bubble is going to burst. And so what are they going to do? Like, how do you design your processor to be able to handle advanced AI stuff if maybe all the advanced AI stuff either becomes background noise or just never gets fulfilled because it can't live up to the promise? And
I don't think it's going to burst in that sense. I think it's going to burst in a lot of companies that have gotten large investments just failing because there's a lot of competition. I think AI, this kind of AI, large language model, generative AI is here to stay. It's a question about which companies are going to be in the lead. For now, it doesn't look like Apple is because they'll be depending on ChatGPT for anything that's off device. But how about we start talking about the camera control? On the one hand, this is incredibly creative and sophisticated control. The thought that goes into the ability to do so much with one control on a device is actually quite impressive. And I can maybe see them rolling this into other buttons on the device in the future, right? Like the action button, which currently can do one thing, but imagine if you could do more than one thing with it. The problem is no one's going to use it. I'm already seeing articles about how to turn off the menu. I think if you go into accessibility, camera control, you can turn off the menu so you can just use it as a button to bring up the camera and take a picture. So just use it as a shutter button. The amount of thought that it requires to understand the concept behind this, to get that half click just right, to switch the menu, to slide your fingers while you're gripping your phone, to change the menu, it's really quite difficult. And I can see, I read your article on CNET. We'll link in the show notes. You explained it very well. You must be all geeked out when you have this new thing and you can press and slide, which is really quite an achievement. But I can't see normies, to use that term, using this for anything other than just a shutter button.
Okay. See, the way I'm approaching this, and we should probably say, like, we're recording this on a Tuesday. We've each had this phone for like 4 days, 5 days maybe.
Yeah, since Friday.
Yeah. I spent actually most of Friday just getting mine set up because it ran into some snags copying from my other phone. So I didn't even touch the camera control until I'd had it for like 6 hours. I felt like I was failing in my job as a tech person. But I was like, oh, right. And then there's this other feature that I haven't even looked at yet. However, so we haven't used it a whole lot. I on Saturday or Sunday, I went out to a local farmer's market that's around here just because I wanted to go out and take some pictures. And we'll put some pictures in the show notes, and you should be able to see them if you're viewing this in an app that will show it while you're listening to a podcast. Anyway, and I was very deliberately trying to use the camera control, trying to get a feel for it. The biggest thing that has struck me is that it is a rethinking of your muscle memory, because so many times I would be in position, right? So I'm composing a shot. I've got my hand on the camera control, and then I decide I think I want this to be the 2x zoom, or I want to zoom in, and it's just so much easier for me to tap the 2x button on the screen. Now, I mean, part of this is that's perfectly valid, and I saw that even when you have the little camera control visible, the actual control part of it, you can slide your finger on it on the screen, so you don't have to use the capacitive button if you don't want to. And so that's
okay. I hadn't spotted that yet.
Well, I saw some videos of people doing it, and it looked like they were just doing it on the middle of the screen. And so I'm sitting in my living room just like moving things up and like nothing's really happening. And it turns out like you have to have some contact with the actual little bump of a control that appears to slide it. But
right, the overlay on the photo, on the image.
And so that's good. Like this gives you more options for what is comfortable to you. But I was trying to use it as intended, or use it as advertised, and use the capacitive thing. And I found that getting the feel to activate that little overlay was the biggest challenge. Like, I can do it, but it takes some practice. You're not just going to be like, press the button or half press or whatever it is. Like, it's more subtle than that. And I think you're going to have to build the muscle memory to do that, and determine if it's worth building that muscle memory.
So 2 things. First of all, people with real cameras are used to half pressing the shutter button, and you don't half press this, or at least not the same way. It's a different kind of press. The force is different. This is why we're all getting photos of our shoes, because we're pressing too much in the half press. The second thing is, what sort of case do you have on your phone?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Oh, you don't use a case. Okay. So
I don't use a case,
I have the Peak Design case, and I don't know if you can see this well, but there's a recess in the case that lets you touch the camera control. Now, Apple's clear plastic MagSafe case has an actual bit of sapphire that goes on the camera control, which is conductive. So you're not pushing in. And I think that's going to make a big difference, whether or not you have a case, or if you have Apple's case or other cases that might work more efficiently. Because all the other buttons go out and this one has to go in, right? It can't be covered. My guess is that the third parties who make cases weren't told that if they put a sapphire thing in, then it would be capacitive. And
I'm sure.
That means that they have a disadvantage to Apple in terms of Apple's case. I like Apple's clear plastic case. I had it for a couple of iPhones. I think it's very good. It's not like the silicone cases that wear out very quickly. But I still think if you're used to a real camera, you're used to a half press, there's a distance you can go. There's more of a distance you can go with a half press on a shutter button of a camera than you can here.
Yeah.
And you have to, getting that muscle memory, it has to be really subtle. And don't forget, you're gripping the phone so you don't drop it, especially if you go caseless. You're in a hurry maybe to catch a moment. And that to me is one of the biggest problems. This is kind of like putting a camera on a tripod. using this thing, taking the time to adjust it. So let's say you get to a scene outdoors, a landscape, you have the time to adjust it with this control, but you can't quickly pick up your phone, switch zoom using this camera control more quickly than tapping the zoom on the screen, or switch any of the other options.
Yeah, I think that's key right there. This does not give you an immediate advantage. It is a technologically impressive feat for sure. And I think it's going to be interesting to see like what other developers do with it. Like that can be an interesting thing. But the modality of here I am shooting, I want to switch my camera lens. So I have to do the little half press touch thing, do that twice, slide to the camera's option, press that.
Let go before you press the shutter.
Right. And then slide again to pick the camera.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then
that's a lot of steps.
It's a lot of steps versus I just want to tap on the screen, go to the 2x camera, and then take my picture. One curious thing that I found as I was walking around, so I basically kind of impulsively went out shooting at this market. I didn't bring anything with me. I should have brought a tote bag or something because it's a outdoor Sunday market. It's beautiful stuff. And so I took some pictures and then I picked up I bought some donuts and I bought a thing of flowers. What this means is that for the latter half of me shooting, I was doing it one-handed because I had to carry the other stuff in my other hand. And I was curious to see how that would work. Surprisingly, because of the way I was holding it, so I'm right-handed, and it was actually easier for me to manipulate the camera control with my thumb. So either holding it in a vertical orientation or even just holding it horizontally, but using it with my thumb, that was actually better for me than holding it with two hands and manipulating the screen. Now, not to do a whole lot of stuff because, again, running into the complication of multiple presses and half presses and all of that. But that was a surprise to me that worked as well as it did.
I would like to see the little menu that pops up be a bit larger. It's quite tiny.
Yeah.
There's no reason for it to be that tiny. It's temporarily blocking something in the frame, and that's not a problem, but it's really small. If I don't have my reading glasses on, I can't see what it is. If I'm outside walking, I can't see anything there. Yeah.
Also, I found that one of the features of this is when you activate that, it removes the other elements on the screen, the UI elements, with the idea being like you can see what you're shooting without distraction. And I found that to be too much. I want to be able to see, which camera I'm at. And so in the camera control settings, there's a clean preview. You can turn that off and you'll still see your UI stuff. Because the overlay is not very big, I don't feel like it got in the way. And it was getting rid of everything else on the sides that was just too much for me.
Where is this in the settings? I'm trying to find this in the settings. So then the settings app and then camera and then where?
Settings, camera. And then at the very top it says camera control under system settings. You tap camera.
Clean preview. Okay. Turn that off. Good idea.
Clean preview.
Thank you.
And also I should point out, there's also an option to launch the camera with a double click instead of a single click. I actually do like being able to launch the camera just by pressing the button, and it's a full press. But to do that from being locked, again, like the position of my thumb, it sort of made that a little bit easier, even though for the whole history I've always just swiped right on the lock screen.
But what I've found is that if your phone is locked, pressing once doesn't bring the camera up. It has to unlock when you press. So you actually have to either have it directly looking at you. If you press when you're not looking at it, if you press when you're taking it out of your pocket, right? You still have to press again to bring it up. So it's not great. I want to ask you a question. At what point do we say that there are too many buttons on the iPhone? Because can you tell me how many buttons there are on the iPhone? I want you to think very carefully. This is a trick question.
Without looking over and counting?
Yep.
I would say there are what, 6 now?
8. There are 8 buttons. 8. And I'm going to go from left to right clockwise, and then I'm going to change. So volume down, volume up, action button. On the right, power button, camera control. On the front, 2 buttons at the bottom of the lock screen and the dynamic island. These are all pressable. Okay. I'm calling them buttons because they're all pressable and they all do actions.
Okay, gotcha.
How many more will be too many? 8 buttons. Now, obviously, the 2 on the bottom of the lock screen are only available from the lock screen. But still, I have mine set, one to launch the camera, the other the flashlight. But that means there's 8 buttons all together that do all different things, right? It's getting to be like a real camera with too many buttons now.
Can you have too many buttons on a real camera?
You can have too many buttons on a real camera.
Yeah. Actually, I agree with you there. Well, then clearly, obviously, the iPhone 17 needs a knob.
to balance out the camera bump. To balance the camera bump, put a knob on the bottom left back to like control focus and volume and all sorts of things like that.
Honestly, I would not be horribly surprised if that was something that came. or
even a knob coming out of the left bottom side. It would have to be, it wouldn't be room for it to be fully round inside. We won't speculate on this, but that would be a knob in the iPhone 19, knob. Definitely.
Actually, the way Apple would do it is one of the corners would be
one of the corners. Ooh, capacitive. Okay, good idea. Capacitive corner.
We are looking into the future.
Okay, quickly, let's talk about the differences in the cameras. I want to say that I don't think a 5x zoom is very useful. It's equivalent of like 120 millimeters in normal camera. The quality's not that good. It's only 12 megapixel. And a number of reviews are pointing out that anything between 2x and 5x suffers in quality because it's a digital zoom. Yeah. I would rather have seen a 3x zoom, which is what I guess I had on my 14 Pro and what was on the 15 Pro, but not the 15 Pro Max. So I don't think the 5x is a really good choice. And I can't see people really using it a lot.
I can see people using it because they want zoom. Like when they want to zoom in, they want to zoom in.
But how often do you want to zoom in 5x? Maybe if you're taking a shot of the Grand Canyon and you want to zoom something distance, or you're in New York and you want to get, you want to be in the Bronx and get a picture of the Statue of Liberty, right? You're going to zoom in because it's 3 miles away.
Yeah. I mean, well, because it's the only option, if you want to zoom anything, that's what you're going to do. And so as someone who has been used to the 3x zoom, because I just had the Pro, not the Max last year, it is definitely something I have to get used to because I will be – I mean this morning I went for a little walk. It's foggy here right now, which is wonderful. And so – I wanted to zoom in on, like a little foggy patch of the road and realized that I could either shoot it really wide and then maybe crop in later, or I needed to back up or reframe or whatever just because, I mean, I totally get the appeal of 5X and the appeal of this is something that has a big zoom because I think a lot of people are moving up to the Pro because that's how you get the zoom. The regular 16 doesn't have the zoom. And I can also see like this is great if you are deciding that you're going to take your phone on vacation, but you don't want to take a regular camera or your spouse, mom, whoever. They're not crazy like you. You're going to take your camera gear, but they're not going to. They're going to expect you to get the good pictures, but they also want to get good pictures. A 5x zoom for traveling and things like that is great. So it's fine. I wish it was better. I wasn't really clamoring for the 5x last year, which is why I know a lot of people who bought the Max because they wanted the 5x zoom, and that
I'd like to see their photos libraries and see how many photos they shot with the 5x zoom and kept.
That would be interesting, yeah.
Because, 120 millimeter, that means that you don't have much room to sway. So you're framing things. If you move a little, you need to reframe. And
Yeah.
it just, I mean, in my unfortunately, it rained an awful lot this weekend. I'm talking like torrential rain. So I didn't get a lot of time. I went out on Friday and took some photos, and then I went out a little bit yesterday. Today it was too murky to take photos. Everything looked gray. So it wasn't like, was it last year? No, it was a year before. My neighbors, the farmers, have a pumpkin patch across the road from me. And when the iPhone came out, the pumpkins were all getting big. And this year they're all really tiny. So I couldn't even get pumpkin photos this week.
Oh, well, see that. No, you have to use the 5x zoom to make
them look bigger.
Yeah. So some things. I mean, we're running out of time. Maybe we go into some of these other things in a follow-up episode. But for me, in terms of the cameras, what's more interesting and a true surprise. Well, two things. One, having the ultra wide be a 48 megapixel camera is interesting. And I don't feel like I've taken enough photos yet to really tell how that's going to work out. Because, like, for example, the ultra wide is what is used for the macro. But
exactly.
But macro pictures are still coming out as 12 megapixels because it crops into a portion of that camera. And so I don't know yet. I haven't pixel peeped enough. I have some samples. I'll put some in the show notes, but I haven't pixel peeped to say, wow, this is such an amazing difference. So that'll be something like hardware-wise, that sounds really good on paper, and I don't yet know what that means.
Yeah,
practically speaking. And then the other thing, which is the big surprise for me, is photographic styles. And again, maybe we want to just do this in a separate episode. Because
I think we need to do this in a separate episode. And I'm going to tell you why. I was watching Marcus Brownlee's review of the iPhone 16, and he was showing the camera control, how you could adjust tone and photographic styles. And when you adjust tone, it doesn't stick. It's only for one photo. And when you would do photographic styles, then you can save it. So I think this is something we need to talk about in our next episode, about what the difference is between tone and photographic styles and how to work with them. What disappoints me is you can only have one photographic style. Now, I assume that in some later version of iOS, they're going to let you save multiple photographic styles as, like your Fujifilm film simulations, right? But you can only have one, which seems awfully limiting. You don't always want the same photographic style. At this point in the podcast, Jeff and I launched into a 6-minute discussion of photographic styles and realized that we really didn't understand how they work. So I'm cutting this whole section out. We promise that our next episode will look in detail at photographic styles. Now back to the podcast.
Again, just picturing me at the market shooting, there's a lot going on. There's the button press. There is the control, the half presses, the touches, the haptic feedback, the sliding your fingers. There is the photographic styles. We have the tone. It's a lot now.
And that's why I said early on that normies aren't going to use this. They're going to press the button to bring the camera up. They're going to press the button to take a picture. They're going to accidentally press the button and slide their finger and get something they didn't like. And it's going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of criticism of this a month or two down the line as people see how complicated it is. It is technologically quite attractive, right? A button with haptic feedback that's capacitive. You can drag your finger, but sometimes you don't need complexity, right? The whole point of an iPhone is it's been simple. It's been easy to take photos with an iPhone.
Yeah.
And now they're bringing this up to, I don't want to say DSLR level because it's not the same, but there are so many variables in this now that it's getting more complicated. How about in the next episode, we talk about photographic styles and we both try and figure out how they work, because it shows that I, just like you, I was spending more time on the camera control than looking into any of the other features because I had so many shots of my feet and I wanted to figure out how to get actual photos. So in the next episode, we'll talk about photographic styles. Okay, so we're going to cut out snapshots for this week because this is going really long. And I guess our homework for the next 2 weeks is to mess around with photographic styles and see what happens. Until next time, Jeff.
Until next time. And your homework, listener, is to go take a bunch of pictures, which, of course, is always our homework.
And if you do have a new iPhone, please drop some photos in our Facebook group.
Excellent. All right. Until the next time.
Thanks for listening to Photoactive. You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. We couldn't afford the M. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/photoactivecast. That's photoactivecast in one word. You can subscribe to Photoactive in your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts. See the links on our website. And think about leaving us a rating or review in iTunes or in your podcast app.